Well, he wouldn't quit, so the president asked him to quit. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle now. And Bill, as you may have heard, Attorney General Jeff Sessions received a polite letter from the president asking him to resign, or perhaps a phone call. And Sessions made clear that he was not leaving of his own will and accord by starting off his resignation letter by saying, as you've requested. I submit my resignation. Of course, the Attorney General has had a fraught relationship with the president since he recused himself from the whole issue of the Russia probe and collusion. And now the president has actually bypassed the deputy attorney general, who was Rod Rosenstein, who was overseeing Robert Mueller's investigation, and has gone to the chief of staff, Matthew Whitaker, who has previously expressed some reservations about this probe into President Trump and possible collusion with Russia. Bill, first of all, I guess we normally go through a house cleaning right after an election, but does it surprise you that Jeff Sessions was the first to go, and if not, why not?
To be perfectly honest with you, the thing that surprises me about Jeff Sessions is why he was the last to go. I mean, there have been two big disappointments in the Trump presidency for me. One of them is the border promise that is certainly a lot tougher to fulfill than it certainly seemed to be. But I think even more mysterious and heartbreaking to me is the Jeff Sessions thing. Because, Scott, we talk about elections, we talk about voter fraud, we talk about corruption, we talk about this, we talk about that, Kavanaugh, rape accusations, all of it, the whole ball of wax, all of it comes down ultimately to one thing, and that is there the rule of law in this country, yes or no? And to have an attorney general with so much evidence on his hands regarding some of the previous occupants, and so much evidence in terms of the weaponization of the government, forget individuals if you want to, I spent every single moment of Jeff Sessions' time as attorney general waiting to wake up and see him in front of the Capitol building with 7 or 8 forklifts with cargo pallets filled with indictments, and that this would be the explanation for what's been going on for the last 2 years. I don't believe in Banana Republic kind of retribution against political opponents, but more dangerous than that by a wide margin is the sense of the disregard of the law that has just run rampant in this country. We're not even talking about, important issues like the difference between legislation and executive orders. We're talking about, are people above the law in this country, yes or no? And I think we all know who we're talking about principally. And the reason that this could be good news is if these crimes are not prosecuted, I don't care actually much what happens afterwards, but if we don't get convictions for these things, I do care, but I don't care as much as the convictions, then this is just going to continue. What do we do? What do we do if the IRS can do whatever they want to, and when we ask questions about it, we find out that 15,000 computers had the same error at the same time or whatever? It's like hearing Michael Jackson tell you he never had any plastic surgery done. If we lose respect for the rule of law, and it's well on its way out the door, then we've lost the whole shooting match.
Bill, let me just turn that around on you. Is it possible that the Attorney General of the United States, who, by the way, was a well-respected senator before he became the Attorney General of the United States, is it possible that, in fact, he does have the so-called evidence in his hands, and reviewing that, along with his associates in the Department of Justice, has determined that there are no prosecutable offenses there, or there's not enough evidence to bring charges? And what makes you think that you, sitting at this great remove from Washington, D.C., have better evidence of crimes than the Attorney General, who has primary evidence in his building?
That is a superb question, and I'm not being the slight bit facetious about that. That is a superb question, and I have an answer for that I think will stand the cross-examination there. The director of the FBI James Comey at the time, made a 30-minute public statement regarding what he had determined Hillary Clinton's actual actions were. And he listed them in great detail. And it was a ringing indictment. Time and time and time again, we found cases not only of improper behavior, but known improper behavior. And as I think I remember Trey Gowdy saying, the most compelling evidence is when you have evidence of people trying to cover up a crime. That means they not only committed the crime, but they were aware they committed the crime. And we have bucket loads of that stuff. And Director Comey came out and made a 30-minute case that puts Hillary Clinton behind bars for the rest of her life. And then the political action took place when he said, however, I don't think that I don't think any reasonable prosecutor would take the case. Okay, well, let's see what the next prosecutor has to say. This is not, I'm not inventing this. This is not like a conspiracy theory thing. This is not stuff that I read on the dark net. And this isn't interpretations of the way she coughed. Maybe she's got Parkinson's disease. None of that. This is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation announcing the results of his findings and indicating again and again and again and again and again and again and again, felony, 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 felony. I don't think we should prosecute. So that's my answer. That's why the evidence is there.
Well, there's been speculation that President Trump has not fired Attorney General Sessions earlier, mostly because that could be seen as some kind of obstruction of justice, since he is the head of the Department of Justice, and there's a probe going on that's run by a special counsel that is overseen by the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. It doesn't seem to me that situation improved in the wake of the House takeover by the Democrats in the day after the election. I wonder why President Trump feels free now to can Jeff Sessions when previously he seemed reluctant to do so, and the theory was because he didn't want to make it look like he was obstructing justice. How did things improve the day after the election?
Well, I don't know the answer to this question, but if I had to guess, I would say that after the election, Donald Trump knew that firing the Attorney General would not cause even more frothing on the mouth from the part of the left. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, to clarify it, let's say he decided to fire Jeff Sessions the day before the election. What is going to happen? What's the result of that going to be on the voting? Well, it's going to motivate a few Republicans, but what it's really going to do is it's going to give the entire Democratic Party yet another rallying call, another bugle call about the tyranny that's come to America. Fascism is here. He's just plain ignoring the law, and he's just casting away justice at a whim. And so tactically, it sounds to me like it's pretty wise to wait until after the election. But here's what's interesting about this. And this is where I think we separate the men from the boys, morally speaking. I want guilty people to be convicted, and I want them to be punished, and I don't care what their party is. I don't care. This has to happen, Scott. And Donald Trump, I don't know what they know and what they don't know, but I know what I heard from the director of the FBI, and that is nuts. And I know what I heard. I know what I heard from the assistant director of the Internal Revenue Service, who said that there were multiple backup failures. I think the final number is 1,500 or something like, or maybe 15,000 cases where, those records that you're asking about, they somehow the computer didn't, the computer files were accidentally erased. Do you have backups? Yes, but those were erased too. How many backups do you have, and how many computers were they on? It was on hundreds of computers, and we had hundreds, if not thousands, of backups, but they all failed at the same time. This is it. This is the entire issue. And everything that we've talked about on the show before and after, and that you and I have talked for 10 years now on camera about, all of it comes to, is there a law in the United States? And if so, is it being enforced? And I was saying I want guilty people to go to jail regardless of their party. And one of the many things that you and I have in common is an astonishment and an awestruck regard for the Constitution that borders on a mystical kind of a just plain amazement. As an instrument of fallible human beings, as a political instrument, I have religious feelings about the Constitution. I think it's so magnificently brilliant. And so when I ask myself the kind of questions that people of any kind of moral character should ask themselves, which is the question you should ask yourself every day, and I certainly do, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about this? What if I'm wrong? And what if I'm so wrapped up in this echo chamber that this is, in fact, firing Jeff Sessions is, in fact, an enormous warning sign? What if I'm wrong? I come back to this, and I'm going to ask you the question, Scott, because you know more about the Constitution than anybody I've ever met. Does the Attorney General of the United States serve at the pleasure of the President?
Indeed, he does.
Then he can be fired at any time. And it's not a question, of me not wanting to see certain things about Donald Trump. It's not that. It's a question of me having utter faith in the structure as the structure was given to us, not how it's being enforced now, but as the structure was given to us. If it's good enough for the founding fathers to have determined that the President of the United States shall have the Attorney General serve at his pleasure and not be in elected office, or a lifetime appointment like the Supreme Court, if it's good enough for the founders, it's good enough for me.
Well, and let me follow up on that point, because I don't think the beef is, or the question is, whether the president had the authority to fire the attorney general. It more has to do with appearances and the suggestion by some on the left that this could put him in a position of looking like he was trying to cover up something, trying to silence something, trying to shut down something. But my question about this really has more to do with Donald Trump's leadership style, because he has spent the better part of a year passive-aggressively sniping at the Attorney General of the United States without coming right out and firing him.
Now, I'm amazed at this, too. I can't explain it. We've seen a lot of turnover in the Trump administration, a lot of it. And most of them I don't miss. I miss Nikki Haley very much. But most of them, okay, it's not working out. And they say, well, there's never been this kind of disorder and confusion. And so I don't care. The guy has never been a politician before. You put somebody in the job, and if they're not working, fire them and get them out. I actually think that's healthy. But why Jeff Sessions has lasted as long as he did was and remains a mystery to me.
And to pry into that mystery, this is not to lapse into conspiracy theory, but now Jeff Sessions is a free man, and he's been sent packing under somewhat humiliating circumstances. Is there concern, do you think, or would concern be justified to say, wow, what if Jeff Sessions suddenly starts talking? What if he meets with the special prosecutor now, since he was certainly an insider in the administration? Do you think Donald Trump should have that concern, or does the fact that Donald Trump fired him show how confident Trump is that Sessions has nothing to say about him?
Well, I wouldn't go there first. My assumption would be that Donald Trump did not keep Jeff Sessions on because he feared what Sessions might say if he was fired. I think Trump fired Sessions because he gave him 2 years to do a pretty simple job, and we didn't. Not only did we not see these indictments, we didn't see a particle of motion that I'm aware of. So I don't think it's necessarily that. Now the question is, does Jeff Sessions have something to tell the press that's going to scandalize the press? Of this I have no doubt. Will he tell the press something that'll scandalize the press? I don't know. But when I say scandalize the press, Scott, anything's going to scandalize the press. The question is, does Jeff Sessions have evidence that Donald Trump committed felony crimes as president of the United States? And I think the answer to that question is pretty conclusively no. And one of the reasons I think that question gets a no is because Robert Mueller's been on this probe, which was started not only illegally and immorally, but just plain fraudulently. We think Donald Trump's been colluding with the Russians. We need a search warrant in order to check all of his files and break into his lawyer's apartment and office and violate lawyer-client privilege. Really, says the judge? Yes. What evidence do you have of this? Well, we have the evidence of reports in the media that Donald Trump's been colluding with the Russians. Well, where did those reports come from? They came from us.
Well, for weeks now, the chattering class has been all a Twitter over the forthcoming indictments that should be flowing out of the special prosecutor's investigation. And not only has the chattering class been all a Twitter, but the Twittering class has been all a chatter about this. And so far, we have seen nothing. Apparently, Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, is expecting indictments related to the meeting that he held in New York with somebody who was promising to feed him negative information about Hillary Clinton during the during the campaign. And all of this is not to say a question. This is to tell our viewers, ladies and gentlemen, there is more to come in this process. And Bill Whittle will be with you 5 days a week to bring...
Just as confused as you are.
Just as confused as you are, but being able to anchor in bedrock principle the ideas that we hear bandied about in the news so casually. And that's why you tune in. That's why members at BillWhittle.com are willing to part with $9.95 a month so that they can spread those principles far and wide. We're grateful to them. We know it takes, you have to work for that money, and we want to put the work in to deserve that money, and we want to be worthy of it. So we appreciate that. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.